So, yeah, all right. So we agree. Leadership, setting a culture, right? And then right there next to it, because it's related to it. I mean, all these things kind of touch each other a little bit, but communication for me would be next because that's how you get that buy-in. Right? That's where you get that authenticity, that relatability, the creative means that Pete would talk about in order to teach or to help people understand their jobs. That I put under communication. It's a broad way of looking at a whole bunch of different skills and talents. Mm-hmm. But if you can't communicate your vision, it doesn't really matter what your vision is. So I guess I would put that second. And then third is what that vision is. Having a clear vision for what kind of team you want out on the field. Do you want to be more physical? Do you want to be finesse? Do you want a passing attack, a running attack? How do all those things fit together? I go back to who was it? Was it Joel Klatt told us about what Jim Harbaugh did at Michigan, where basically everything was designed to fit together. Mm-hmm. It was a clear vision for the type of team he wanted to build, and he's brought that with him wherever he goes.
Correct. Yeah, I really put those as kind of aspects of leadership.
Okay.
Yeah, I think all of those things fold into just who that leader of the organization is going to be. From communication and never, ever deviating. As I told you, one of the executives there in Detroit, that's one of the things that you maybe not heard quite as much. The just Dan's presence and his communication, you hear a lot of that. But everybody in the organization, from owner to president to GM to head coach, this is who we are, and we are not going to compromise. We're just not. Michigan did not compromise. This is who we are. You'll see certainly coaches in recruiting, Salk, this really comes to life, like in college football recruiting across all the sports. This is the kind of player we need, and, I need a shooter. Everyone in our program needs a shoot. Yeah, well, this one doesn't. No, they've got to be able to shoot the ball. Like, here's our tenets, here's our standards. And if we deviate with one, it's going to really affect the overall kind of culture and dynamic of the team. So to not compromise, and unfortunately, I think over the last 6 years, that would be the area that Pete would say to you and me and to others privately, like, I think too many times we compromise with different personnel.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about that. In fact, I was on Chicago radio yesterday.
Oh yeah,
and they were asking me about. No, it was a guy who's on after those guys, sort of like the swing shift guy, and he was asking me about Shane Waldron, and that's right where I went. Like, he's like, is he a good coordinator? I'm like, I think so. But I think he was in a really bad spot and asked to make a lot of compromises between Pete and Russ, and then Russ was gone, and it just never really felt like the right marriage. Yep. So yeah, all right, you can put them all as part of leadership. To me, they're various aspects of it. So maybe they all, as I said, they all kind of fit together. But you got to be able to lead, you got to be able to communicate, and you got to have a vision for your entire building and where you want it to go. Next for me would be you got to hire the right people and know who you want to execute that vision. Yeah. And having a lot of bright minds in your building gives you a lot more chances to outthink opponents. And it dawns on me that a lot of the people out there right now that are clamoring for one of these, brilliant young assistants, what they really want are for those people to be your assistants. To have people like Ben Johnson, to have someone like Mike McDonald, to have an Ejiro Evero, to have because over the last 5 to 7 years, Seahawks haven't had those guys. And that's not to say that Johnson or McDonald or any of them can't be a good head coach. One of them might be a phenomenal head coach. But when I hear some of the lust to bring that type of guy in, I think a lot of it has to do with what's been missing here for however long at the assistant spot. Not necessarily at the head coaching spot.
Yeah, and I think it also has to do, and rightfully, and I kind of verify the Twitter voice in this way, is what else has happened around the league. That Kyle Shanahan did grow from a great coordinator into a head coach who still calls the plays, Salk, and will still tell the back judge, hey, watch your grab here. I'm setting this thing up perfectly. Right, and I've ran these 3 plays, so we're going to get George on a corner here and watch. His safety may grab him, so just be alert. Or D'Amico Ryans, who there before the 3rd down against Cleveland tells his inside linebacker, stay flat-footed, stare at Gerald Flacco. They're going to run a stick route, and I want you to jump that route.
And it's great when that comes from the head coach, but it doesn't have to. I mean, that can come from the coordinator. I mean, we just don't necessarily see it the same way.
It can, but here's the key with that, and this is where I kind of debated yesterday, and I would debate further, is that in order then to procure that talent, in order to bring great coordinators in, you've got to have a tremendous understanding.
So then let me finish off my little fivesome here, because I said at the beginning I had maybe overstated my case against X's and O's, and I don't want to say it's not relevant. In fact, I think there are 3 reasons why it is important. One, it probably helps the buy-in if the people below you know that you know your stuff, right? It's hard if, like, I try to imagine someday like being brought in to lead a company that you know nothing about their product. Right? Like you've worked in tech and all of a sudden you get brought in to run like a
Callahan Auto Parts.
Yeah, exactly. And people are like, yeah, man, you don't know anything about what we do.
Yes.
So I think having that mastery of the X's and O's is important. I'm going to guess almost anybody who's up for a head coaching job has that. But okay, it is important. 2, smart people want to learn from and work for other smart people. And so if you want to, attract those types of minds, the young Ben Johnsons, the young Mike McDonalds, the young Shane Steichens, whatever, it sure helps if people want to go learn from you and learn your system to bring some of that in. And then finally, you can actually help the people you have hired, which is what you were just talking about, whether it's on the field, et cetera. So I don't mean to say it's not important, but to me, it's not ahead of those other 3 or 4 things.
Yeah, to me, it
works in complement with them.
Yeah, to me, it is more important, and I think you're alluding to in some of this, and I don't disagree. I think leadership is still, and the presence, and all of those things are critically important. But I just watched too many times, Salk, where you hire just a bunch of yes people to you, and you do that because you do have your X's and O's, and they're never going to reach you, and they don't want people to challenge them in that way. So I want someone that knows calculus and knows it well, and wants then to bring people actually that know more than him. We're right there with him, have that kind of horsepower.
Yes.
So that is what's going on in the building, and I don't think, unfortunately, especially defensively, over the last 6-7 years, that has necessarily been the case. I watched these games over the weekend, and that to me jumped out as much as anything. Right when you watch them, okay, how do they compare to the Seahawks? How close are the Seahawks? The Seahawks are close. I mean, you kidding me? There's many Seahawk players that would have been on that field over this weekend and played at a high level. I mean, DK and Tyler, and there's certainly Uchenna Nwosu. Like, you got a bunch of players. Spoon. Oh my gosh, Spoon would be a nickel for Detroit that would be an absolute star. He's everything that Detroit Lions, preach and play for, and he plays in that exact same vein. So you have a ton of your personnel. But man, watching these teams just play defense and just be aggressive and come downhill and tackle and not just play this rope-a-dope, keep everything, play base personnel.
But that's not X's and O's.
Oh, there's some X's and O's to that of when to blitz and how to be aggressive and how we're going to blitz. Did you hear the linebacker? The linebacker for Detroit with the game-sealing interception. The level of detail that he spoke to on that play was KJ Wright-esque. It was like, we worked all week on this field blitz, and we knew that he was going to. And
Understood, but that's not because their head coach, Dan Campbell's a big X's and O's guy. It's because they've got the right coordinators in place doing a great job of executing his vision of being a rough and tough physical team. Has anybody accused Dan Campbell of being an X's and O's genius?
Dan Campbell's your guy. For your argument, Dan Campbell is your guy.
I agree.
Kyle Shanahan would be my guy. There's both ways to do it. Dan Campbell never was a coordinator. He never called plays.
Right. And John Harbaugh and Andy Reid probably go on either side of it on the other side, right?
That's right.
John Harbaugh is on the Dan Campbell side, and Andy Reid is in the more of the X's and O's side.
Not really. Yes, but he was, even Andy Reid, when he got his first job, was more of a O-line and QB coach from Green Bay. He wasn't a coordinator in Green Bay. So, yeah, and that's been a lot of years.
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of
changed a little bit.
Calling plays for kind of a long time. So, obviously, he's got some of that in him.
Yes,
but,
he has.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could just look at it and say there's more than one way to skin this cat. But I would tend to lean towards valuing those other qualities first and the scheme and X's and O's ability second. Not that it's unimportant, but that it still falls behind. But again, it's the only thing we really have to judge because we just don't know that much about the other guy's ability to lead.
That's right. Well, you know some. You know how Vrabel leads. You know how Harbaugh leads. You know how Bill leads. Right? And that's what's fascinating about this game of musical chairs. There's 5 left. Right? There's 5 musical chairs seats left. That's it. 3 of them have been filled.
Is Belichick going to be out of a job?
I'm going to get to him in Blue 80.
Is Belichick going to be out of a job when this is all said and done?
The greatest of all time.
Are people going to look at this and be like, yeah, I'd rather have Bobby Slowick than Bill Belichick?
10 Super Bowls.
Is that a real thing that could happen?
10 Super Bowls?
It's pretty.
Did he go to 10 Super Bowls this century?
Hey, who do you want? I want this Patrick Graham character. Belichick? Nah. Let's take a shot. I mean, but there's an argument to be made in that
Yeah.
in that case.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a hard one to make, but it is out there. It may be one that later we're kind of looking back and going, who in the world argued for Bobby Slowick over Bill Belichick?